Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. As you can see, Greg Soulje is back with us today, and meteorologist Greg Soulje, I should say, and probably people recognize you by now because we've been talking a lot about the weather here in the last month or two, and then some previous monthly kind of exchanges. But we're doing these midweek updates now, and there's lots to talk about, Greg. Glad we started these. I mean, what do we got? Bitter cold. Oh my gosh, can't stay warm. And then we've got snow, Texas, Florida, I've been hearing. So I know we got a lot to get going. So, let's turn it over to you and take it away.
Okay. The gentleman I kind of cut my teeth on in the weather business, Earl Finkel, would say, and just sit back and think about this. Abnormal weather will get you abnormal weather. So it's really just a kind of a trickle down effect of doesn't work out in average or normal sense in one area of the country. It's going to be the same in the other and vice versa. But in any event, onto the headlines around here. And boy, there are plenty of them. First, across the Corn Belt. Matter of fact, the plains, the southern Canadian prairie, all the way to the Gulf Coast, and we'll take a look at how cold it will be. It's actually the old 1-2 punch. We talk about that here across the mid-latitudes, the plains and the Corn Belt, for example, when you first get the winter storm, and then the second punch is the Arctic air. Well, we haven't had much on the way of snow, but they're getting that 1-2 punch over the Gulf Coast, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But anyway, sub-zero cold was pretty much widespread almost to the Ohio River this morning. Parts of Minnesota the past couple of mornings have been 30 to 35 below zero north of the Twins, and there have been a number of reporting stations there that have been at 40, not wind chill, but actual 40-degree below zero temperatures up north of the Arrowhead of Minnesota, north of Lake Superior, and that what we call mother lode of Arctic air. So cold is the story across the Corn Belt, the plains, and of course, plenty of a need to keep things going out there in those feedlots the best you can, the confinement areas, water lines, all that into account for livestock operations. So it's a pretty tough one to say the least. And here's a look at high temperatures for the day today. And it's basically the story of readings that will just barely get past the zero mark over much of the Great Lakes region, the northern half of the Corn Belt. And we'll take a look at the snow cover map here in just a minute. But there's not much in the way of snow on the ground into parts of the Corn Belt areas, central Corn Belt areas, for example, the upper Midwest. And if you had snow on the ground, we could easily be looking at readings that were maybe down to 15 or 20 degrees below zero in some of those same snow-covered areas. But nonetheless, it was 15 below out at Rockford, Illinois, double digits down below zero this morning across Iowa and points on northward. So single digits and teens for the day today. And you can see those same hues of blue that will keep readings into the upper teens and 20s all the way down into southern Texas, that Brownsville, Matamoros, Padre Island, Big Spring Break areas. A little early for that time of the year, but in any event, it is a far-reaching 1-2 punch of cold all the way to the central and western Gulf Coast areas. The plain states, as we had talked about, readings were down below zero across the Dakotas, Nebraska, parts of northern Kansas, and the snow cover next to nil. Orion always used to say, Orion Samuelson every year would say, we always try to kill off that winter wheat crop with some sense of cold without the lack of snow cover, but each and every year tends to have a fair amount of resiliency in the exception areas where there's been ongoing dryness and drought. But areas up through Montana, the western Dakotas, it's this downslope, what we call Chinook or wind eating snow pattern. So the snow cover is minimal and temperatures first are forecast to recover across the Dakotas, Montana, areas that you think would be typically colder. But in this particular setup this time of the wintertime season, moderation of temperatures and cold is expected to take place across the Dakotas, the southern Canadian prairie, and upper Midwest. There is the snow cover map, and pretty bare over many areas of southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, Iowa, and points on westward. So if you were already at 15 below zero this morning in many locales, just imagine how cold it would be in some of those snow-covered areas of northern Wisconsin, that big Chippewa Falls flowage area of northwestern Wisconsin. That's a big musky fishing area. That was particularly cold at 23 to 25 below. North of the Twins as well, and up through the Arrowhead of Minnesota, they were down to 30 below zero. Note the little stripe of snow into eastern Texas. had a couple of pictures of some friends down in Houston, just outside of Houston, around LaGrange, Texas. It's about, I think, 90 minutes southwest of Houston, Sarah, with their Irish setter out playing in the snowfall this morning down there with 3 inches of snow on the ground. So wouldn't be surprised that, again, by tomorrow morning, we'll be looking at a snow chart like this that has more snow in the Delta, lower Mississippi Valley, Gulf Coast areas, and we will see in parts of the upper Midwest.
Wow, that doesn't happen that often, does
No,
it? Or is that
rare. Yeah, rare event. So on we go here to the additional headlines, and it will include those southern states, which here it is. It's a historic winter storm, which is underway down there. Snow, sleet, freezing rain. They had 40-mile-an-hour winds, and that snow with near zero visibility. That, by Midwestern standards, an official definition is blizzard weather down there in eastern Texas and southwestern and western Louisiana. And the current radar has some of the snows as far east as about Birmingham, outside of Atlanta right now, and snow just a little bit west of Tallahassee, Florida, would you believe? So winter storm warnings extend there all the way into Ocala, Florida, just north of Orlando. And they're going to be bracing for cold. They'll be down probably below zero south of the Ozarks tomorrow morning. And here is a look at lows. Well, we'll get to that in just a minute. But lows that will be record setting and probably detrimental to, obviously, livestock, poultry, if you're not properly prepared, and sugarcane fields down there in the Delta. In any event, there is the midday weather maps and charts, and you can see that snow area streaking out of New Orleans, of all places, Shreveport, south of Jackson, Mississippi, Birmingham, and outside of Atlanta, snow and rain and some freezing rain, Pensacola to Tallahassee, northward to Augusta, and probably, I would think, and I think I saw some forecasts that the outer banks of North Carolina may have as much as 1 to 3 inches of snow the next 24 to 36 hours, and have alerted to Mr. Armstrong out there in central North Carolina that have, I don't know, snow shovel, snow blower, whatever he may have brought from the Midwest down there, because things are going to be pretty active in that particular part of the country as well. So on to there are the lows, by the way. If we can take a look at those full screen, you can see the lows tomorrow morning into the mid-teens to mid-20s, all the way down to Brownsville. That is the heart north of there to about Beeville, Texas. That's just along the Gulf Coast. If you were to run that there, and a beam to the Rio Grande, that's a big Citrus, Texas area that probably is going to take a hit. With some damage there. The Delta region, sugarcane fields will be in the upper teens and mid-20s. Not sure if that water will freeze up through there or not, but in any event, and look at the cold making its way into the Florida Panhandle, probably come Wednesday or Thursday morning, all the way down to what they call, Sarah, frost-proof Florida. Could be down to the upper 20s. There by the time we get to Thursday morning. So a pretty active weather pattern, to say the least. Historic in nature over the Gulf Coast of the deep southern United States.
Yeah, how long is it going to last? I mean, is it going to be cleared out by, say, the weekend then? It's a short.
Yeah, they'll get a turnaround in temperature readings, but we'll see how, operations go with dealing with the cold and the snow and all that. I'm sure things are shut down. And the other headlines, of course, on the other side of the ledger, anytime you get those lows that come out of, let's say, the Rio Grande Valley, the jet stream digs southward along the Continental Divide. That's how we get into the Arctic air masses here across the heartland. Well, you get that Santa Ana weather pattern going. And so 50 to 100 mile per hour winds. If you get a clockwise flow around the high, it's over Salt Lake City, counterclockwise flow, let's say out of the western Gulf of Mexico to the Rio Grande, those winds come racing down the Santa Ana range, and they blow it, 100 miles an hour, and sometimes under the most favorable setups. And so we're off to the races. A couple of new fires breaking out in San Diego County as well. They're going to keep an eye on active timbers and still ongoing fires that are trying to stay contained across that LA area. So the story goes on there across the southwestern reaches of the country. And there's a small little snapshot of the area that's included through Southern California with respect to extreme and critical fire conditions out there. So there is some good news, by the way, for that southwestern reaches of the country. A lot of the longer range charts that we've been working with are generally leaning towards a continuation from a summation standpoint of below average moisture. But You can see that low, Sarah, as we get on through the end part of the week over California, Nevada, kind of that low, that U-shaped configuration swirling out of Southern California and the southwestern states. That is an up air low that will turn the winds in off the ocean. So first, it's a return out of downslope winds to more of an onshore, more onshore, what we call marine layer air. So that brings in cooler temperatures and moisture, higher humidity and dew points, and a lot less wind. It's a far less windier weather pattern, and there may be some inclination of introducing some shower activity across the LA basin southward into San Diego and the southwestern reaches of the country. And you can see that low by early to middle parts of next week around Arizona, Southern California, and New Mexico. So that is good news because of this story. This is the drought monitor from late last week, and you can see the worst of expanding dryness and drought, where we're going to get some rainfall and some relief over Southern California, Southern Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. You typically, normally in the wintertime season, get recharge, snow season, moisture season. It is not happening. This will be one of the rare systems for this wintertime season, but there may be temporary relief over the southwestern part of the country, New Mexico, and into the Rio Grande and parts of Texas in the shorter term. And then for folks here across the plains and Corn Belt, a little late January thaw. If you just want to buy completely into what the models are thinking, and there's not much deviation from that thinking here in this weather office, that it will be a return to more seasonal temperatures and then a little mini thaw for late January, early February across the plains and Corn Belt locales. So maybe 5 or 6 degrees above average should put readings close to the freezing mark. Daytime is far north of the Twins. Bare ground areas could be well into the 30s around here, beginning mid to late next week. So there's a tide turning with regard to temperature, and pretty good news, at least over the southwestern reaches of the country, the southern plains, the Delta. This should be primarily, except for mountain areas, Sarah, a liquid precip event in the southwestern parts of the country. I think we've had maybe 1 or 2 systems at most in that part of the country this wintertime season. So some drought relief and easing of the wildfire situation significantly in Southern California, drought relief as well for some of those winter wheat fields, and a temperature recovery as well expected over the southwest and southern plain states areas. So that's kind of the headlines from the weather office here for the day today. A lot going on across the country, kind of a reverse order of winter weather, but it is what it is. But there should be relief on a number of fronts around here, both a temperature standpoint and moisture gain here over the next 5 to 7 days.
I like to see that precipitation in those areas that really need that. And, I did see a meme online where this guy is saying something about, hey, Canada, don't mean to nag, but I think you left the door open.
Yeah.
All your cold air. So hopefully Canada finds that door and gets it closed, because it's been something of a last couple of days. Have really been something.
And so much for wanting to add that to the 51st or 52nd state if you follow all that political stuff. So I'll just leave it right there. Yeah, the Canadians can do the best they can keeping the cold up there, and it looks like there'll be a nice recovery here and there in the coming days, but anything's better than 30 to 40 degrees below zero.
Well, and here in the Midwest, where we don't really have much snow, that recovery will come fast, because usually that snow keeps those temps down. If I think about that, so
like I said, it could be a whole lot worse here the past couple of nights if we had significant snow cover on the ground. We don't. There's actually more snow cover in the central and southern Corn Belt areas. They're in through northern areas. So if we get those winds to come in off the Canadian Rockies and the U.S. Rockies, where there's minimal snow cover, that even is a more beneficial temperature setup for this time of the year. So sloppy footing out there, but a better feel for man and beast.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you for the update, Greg. We appreciate that. You can catch Greg here on Feedstuffs 365 every month, and then in between every week, we're doing these little forecasts that are great to stay up to date. Also, every weekend on This Week in Agribusiness on RFD TV and 120 other affiliated stations. Oh, plus a bunch of radio stuff. Greg's everywhere.
Bunch of radio stations, and we'll talk about those guys on a more local basis. Actually, there's one of the radio stations I'm on that has a downloadable app, so we can talk about that if you wanted to hear things. This version on radio, if you will, anywhere in the world, I guess, is the way I understand.
There you go. Perfect. You're everywhere. So we'll catch up with Greg here a little later this week, and we'll get a little update on those snow maps and precipitation, all of that. So have a great day, Greg. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Stay warm.